In the ancient skies of Azanor, dragons once soared, their wings catching the sun's radiant glow. Among them, Phalon, the Silver Mountain Dragon, was the mightiest, a ruler whose breath could liquefy stone and whose roar echoed through the deepest valleys. But those were the days before the great war of the realms. A dark day dawned, one that would forever alter the fate of both dragons and men. As his tribe prepared to unleash fire upon human villages, Phalon made a choice that would seal his destiny. He stood before the formidable Dragon Queen Zephyra, his voice steady. "I will not be part of this massacre." With those words, he turned his back on his own kind and flew towards the human settlements, a harbinger of the doom they faced. Zephyra's fury was absolute. This betrayal could not be forgiven. She dispatched her most skilled warriors, who, after a fierce struggle, managed to capture the defiant Phalon. His punishment was swift and brutal. They stripped him of his power, ripped his majestic wings from his back, and erased his very name from the sacred dragon records. Then, from the highest peak of Spirit Mountain, they cast him down, leaving him to perish in solitude. But Phalon did not die. He tumbled down jagged cliffs, his body broken until he plunged into an icy river that swept him far from the lands of dragons. When he finally awoke days later, his body was a canvas of wounds, and his spirit was shattered. He couldn't remember his name, nor could he speak the ancient dragon tongue. He was a mere shadow, a ghost of the magnificent creature he once was. For years, Phalon roamed the wilderness, a solitary figure hiding from the world. He drank from quiet lakes and hunted wild animals to survive. Life had lost its meaning. The memory of why he had chosen to save humanity had faded into nothingness. He was no longer a king of the skies, but a beast, living one day at a time, lost in a fog of amnesia and despair. Then, on a crisp spring morning, as Phalon drank from a small, clear stream, a sound broke the silence. The gentle crunch of footsteps on dry leaves. He turned, his instincts on high alert, to see a small boy standing just a few paces away. The boy was thin, with hair as black as a starless night and eyes that held a profound sadness. "You're a real dragon!" the boy exclaimed, his voice filled with awe, not fear. Phalon tried to muster a threatening growl, but only a weak, pathetic sound escaped his throat. He wanted to flee, to retreat back into his solitude, but his weary body refused to obey. "I'm Ryan," the boy said, taking a slow, deliberate step closer. "I lost my family in the war. I was living in the village nearby, but nobody really cares about me there." Phalon stared at the boy, a flicker of surprise cutting through his apathy. Why wasn't he screaming? Why hadn't he run? Ryan took another step, extending a small hand that held a piece of dried meat. "Are you hungry? We can share this." For the first time in what felt like an eternity, Phalon felt something stir deep within his chest. It wasn't just pity. It was a strange, unfamiliar pang of connection, a sense of belonging. He slowly raised his massive head, a silent invitation, and allowed the boy to approach. "May I touch you?" Ryan asked, his curiosity outweighing any caution. Phalon hesitated for a moment, then lowered his head until his snout was within the boy's reach. Ryan gently placed his small, warm hand on the dragon's scales, feeling the faint heat that emanated from within. "You're not as scary as they say," Ryan whispered, a small, sad smile gracing his lips. "You're lonely, just like me." He looked into the dragon's deep, ancient eyes. "What's your name?" Phalon couldn't answer, even if he wanted to. The name was lost, buried under layers of pain and forgotten time. He was nameless, a creature without an identity. Ryan studied the dragon's sorrowful gaze, a thoughtful expression on his face. Then, in a quiet, firm voice, he said, "I'll call you Phalon. It means brave in my grandfather's old language. because you look like a brave warrior who's been through a lot." As the name Phelan left Ryan's lips, the dragon felt a jolt, a sharp pang in his heart, as if a long dormant string had been plucked. A forgotten memory, a whisper of his former self, stirred in the depths of his mind. For the first time since his devastating fall, he felt a spark of purpose, a glimmer of hope that his life could have meaning again. From that day forward, an unlikely friendship blossomed in the heart of the wilderness. Ryan visited Phelan every day, bringing him scraps of food and sharing stories of his life in the village. And Phelan, the forgotten dragon, listened. He slowly began to relearn the language of humans, not with his voice, but with his heart, feeling the warmth of companionship seep back into his frozen spirit. This was the quiet beginning of a story no one could have ever predicted. A tale of a dragon who had lost everything, and the small, lonely boy who gave him back his name, and with it, a reason to live once more. Their journey was just starting, a path of healing and discovery that would challenge everything they knew about friendship, bravery, and destiny. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next chapter of our adventure. See you next time. 6 months had flown by, a blur of changing seasons since the day a young boy named Ryan stumbled upon a wounded dragon in the heart of the forest. Summer's vibrant green had surrendered to the fiery embrace of autumn, painting the world in brilliant strokes of amber and crimson. The boy, now 12, had secretly carved out a life for 2. Near the hidden cave where the dragon, Phelan, had made his home, Ryan had built a small, sturdy shelter. It was their secret, a world away from the wary eyes of the village. Every single day, like clockwork, after his chores were done, Ryan would slip away from the village, his small feet knowing the path by heart. He'd spend every precious moment he could with his unlikely friend. On this particular evening, the air had a sharp bite to it, and Ryan's breath plumed in little white clouds before him. He arrived with a small sack slung over his shoulder, a grin stretching across his face. "I brought something special today," he announced, his voice filled with an almost conspiratorial excitement. He carefully unpacked his treasures onto a flat rock, a worn, leather-bound book, a small, crusty loaf of bread, and a little jar of golden honey. He held up the book with a reverence usually reserved for sacred relics. "Lady Mira was cleaning out her library and she gave me this." His eyes sparkled. "It's about dragons." Phelan's great amber eyes, usually clouded with a deep-seated sadness, widened with genuine curiosity. Over the long months, Ryan's care had worked miracles. His wounds had mostly healed, leaving behind a roadmap of scars. But the most prominent, the jagged, angry red marks where his magnificent wings once connected to his back, were a constant, painful reminder of all he had lost. He shifted his massive form, moving closer to get a better look at the book as Ryan opened it and began to read aloud. Ryan's finger, smudged with a bit of dirt, traced the faded illustrations as he read. "It says here that ancient dragons could change their form," he said, his voice buzzing with the thrill of discovery. "That the most powerful among them could even take a human shape to walk among people." As the words left Ryan's lips, a strange, tingling sensation prickled across Phelan's scales. It was like a forgotten song stirring in the depths of his being. A memory, fragmented and distant, flickered through his mind. A ghost of a feeling, the sensation of standing upright on 2 legs, of having nimble fingers instead of powerful claws. The image was hazy, like a dream upon waking, but the feeling was undeniable. That night, long after Ryan had made his way back to the quiet village, Phelan found himself staring into the reflection of the moon on a small, still pond near his cave. The silver light shimmered on the water, creating a distorted, liquid mirror. He saw his own draconic form, powerful yet broken, but something inside him was stirring. A power he thought was lost forever, extinguished with his wings and his pride, was beginning to wake. He closed his eyes, shutting out the world, and focused all his will on that single fleeting memory. The memory of being something else, something smaller, yet whole. He reached for it, pulled at it, willed it to become real, and then a wave of agony ripped through him. It felt as if his very being was being torn apart and remade. Pain, white-hot and absolute, shot through his body as bones shifted and ground against each other. His scales, his armor for centuries, seemed to retreat, melting away into soft, vulnerable skin. He let out a roar of pure agony, but the sound itself began to transform, the guttural, bestial cry twisting mid-air into a raw, human shout. When the torment finally subsided, he dared to open his eyes. Staring back at him from the water's surface was not a dragon, but a man. He was tall, with broad shoulders and a lean, powerful build. A cascade of silver-white hair fell past his shoulders, framing a face that was both new and ancient. And his eyes still held the fiery, molten amber of his dragon form. His back, he could feel, bore two massive, gruesome scars, right where his wings had once been. The next day, when Ryan arrived at the cave, his footsteps crunching on the fallen leaves, he stopped dead in his tracks. He found not his dragon friend, but a tall, imposing man wrapped in makeshift coverings made from old animal hides. The man looked lost, vulnerable, and utterly out of place. "Phelan," Ryan whispered, his voice barely audible. He recognized the eyes. Despite the impossible transformation, he knew those eyes. "Ryan," Phelan replied. The name was a rough, gravelly sound, his voice hoarse from centuries of disuse. It was the first time he had ever spoken the boy's name. "I remember some things." Tears welled in Ryan's eyes. This was too much. Too wonderful. He rushed forward, throwing his arms around the transformed dragon in a fierce, desperate embrace. "You can talk, and you're human!" Phelan, unused to this form and this type of contact, awkwardly returned the embrace, his large hands patting Ryan's back. "Not human," he corrected softly. "Still dragon, but a different shape." Over the following weeks, their strange life took on a new rhythm. Ryan, ever resourceful, brought clothes from the village, spinning a tale about a cousin who had outgrown them. The lie came easily, a small price to pay for his friend's dignity. He patiently taught Phelan to speak properly again, helping him reclaim the language that lay dormant in his mind. He taught him how to walk with the balanced grace of a human rather than the low, coiled prowl of a predator. One evening, as they sat by a small, crackling fire that pushed back the encroaching chill, Phelan asked the question that had been lingering in his mind. His command of language was improving daily, becoming more fluid, more natural. "Why did you help me?" he asked, his amber eyes fixed on the boy. "That first day? Why didn't you run?" Ryan didn't look at him. He stared into the mesmerizing dance of the flames, poking at the embers with a long stick. "Because I know what it's like to be alone," he said, his voice quiet but steady. "After my parents died in the dragon raids, nobody wanted the son of traitors." "Traitors?" Phelan's brow furrowed in confusion. Ryan nodded, his gaze still lost in the fire. "My father, he tried to negotiate peace with the dragons. He believed not all of them were monsters. The village, they called him a fool, a traitor." He jabbed the stick into a log, sending a shower of sparks into the night air. "But I think he was right. Not all dragons are monsters, just like not all humans are kind." A strange, unfamiliar ache spread through Phelan's chest. It was a feeling he couldn't immediately name, but one he would later come to understand as compassion, and perhaps even the first stirrings of affection. He reached out hesitantly, his human hand, with its 5 long fingers, still a marvel to him. He gently wrapped his hand around Ryan's smaller one. "I protected humans once," Phelan said softly, his voice resonating with a deep, ancient sorrow. I think that is why I lost everything." Ryan turned to look at him then, his eyes clear and full of a wisdom beyond his years. He squeezed Phelan's hand tightly. "Not everything," he said firmly. "You have me now." As autumn bled into the stark white of winter, Phelan discovered he could shift between his forms. It was draining, but maintaining his human shape grew easier with practice. In his dragon form, a secret he kept even from the deepest parts of the forest, he would hunt, providing them with food. In his human form, he learned about the world, devouring the stories and knowledge from the books Ryan brought him. He was a creature of two worlds, belonging to neither, yet finding a home in the space between. One night, as the first snow of the season began to fall, blanketing the forest in a soft, silent layer of white, Ryan fell asleep. He was sitting by the fire, leaning against Phelan's human shoulder, utterly exhausted from their long day of gathering and chopping firewood. Phelan gazed at the boy's peaceful face, illuminated by the gentle glow of the firelight. A profound protective warmth spread through him, a feeling far more potent than any fire. With slow, careful movements, he draped a thick woolen blanket over Ryan's small shoulders, tucking it in around him. "I will protect you always," he whispered into the quiet night, the words a solemn vow. A year had passed, a sweet, sun-drenched year where love bloomed between Phelan and Ryan. They had found their rhythm at the edge of the forest, a quiet life built on shared moments. Ryan, with his ink-stained fingers and focused gaze, would lose himself in creating his maps, charting the world they shared. Phelan, with the wilderness in his soul, would hunt and gather, providing for them from the bounty of the land. Sometimes the man would give way to the dragon. Phelan would unfurl his magnificent scarred form, and Ryan would climb onto his back. They would soar, gliding from hilltops over shimmering lakes and verdant valleys. It wasn't the powerful flight of his past. His missing wings limited him to graceful descending arcs. But for Ryan, it was magic. It was seeing the world through his beloved's eyes. It was freedom. But peace, as it often does, proved to be a fragile thing. One autumn morning, the sky began to churn. Storm clouds, an unnatural, bruised purple, gathered over the eastern mountains with impossible speed. Lightning, not gold, but a brilliant, searing blue, tore across the heavens. And the thunder, it didn't just rumble, it roared. Phelan stood outside their small cottage, his body tense, his face a grim mask as he watched the storm claw its way across the land. The air was electric, heavy with a power he knew all too well. "What is it?" Ryan's voice was laced with concern as he came to stand beside him, his hand finding Phelan's. "Dragons," Phelan replied, his own voice tight, almost a stranger to his own ears. "Many of them. Led by—" He trailed off, the name a bitter poison on his tongue. He couldn't say it. "Zafira," Ryan finished for him, his tone low and resolute. Over the past year, as Phelan's memories had resurfaced from the fog of his past, he had shared everything with Ryan. The life he'd lost, the battles fought, and the ultimate betrayal by the Dragon Queen, the one who had stripped him of his wings and his name. "Why now?" Ryan asked, his grip tightening. "After all this time, why come back?" Phelan's eyes, sharp and focused, scanned the horizon. "Something's changed. I can feel it. It's in the earth, in the air. A shift in the balance." He turned to Ryan, his expression more serious than Ryan had ever seen it. "You need to leave. Go south, to the cities. You'll be safe there where her influence can't reach." "I'm not leaving you," Ryan interrupted, his voice unshakable. He took Phelan's hand in both of his, a gesture of absolute certainty. "Whatever comes for you, comes for us. We face it together." Before Fallon could protest, a frantic figure appeared on the road, stumbling toward them. It was a young boy from the village, his face pale with panic, his chest heaving with exertion. "Dragons!" the boy gasped, finally reaching them and bending over, hands on his knees. "Dragons are attacking the eastern villages. The Lord is calling all able-bodied men to defend the region." Ryan placed a calming hand on the boy's shoulder, thanking him and sending him on his way to spread the warning. Then he turned back to Phelan, his own features now mirroring the gravity in Phelan's. "This is it, isn't it? The war. It's beginning again." Phelan gave a slow, somber nod. "Zafira never forgives, and she never forgets. She must have spent all these years gathering her forces, waiting for the perfect moment to strike, to finish what she started." "Then we need allies," Ryan said, a sudden fire of determination in his eyes. He squeezed Phelan's hand once more. "Come on, there's someone we need to see." They moved quickly, leaving the tranquility of their forest home behind and heading into the nearby town. Ryan led them through a maze of alleys to a small, unassuming house tucked between two larger buildings. He knocked on the door in a distinct, rhythmic pattern. A moment later, the door opened to reveal an elderly woman. She was small, with lines of wisdom etched on her face, and her eyes held a knowing depth that seemed to see right through you. "Lady Mira," Ryan greeted her, bowing his head in respect. "We need your wisdom." The old librarian, a woman who had filled Ryan's childhood with books and stories, looked past him, her penetrating gaze landing on Phelan. "So," she said, her voice a soft, rustling whisper, "the rumors were true after all. A dragon walks among us." Phelan went rigid, the instinct to hide, to defend, surging through him. But Ryan's hand on his was a comforting anchor, a silent promise. "Lady Mira is the keeper of old knowledge," Ryan explained softly. "She knows the ancient histories, the forgotten legends. If anyone knows how to fight dragons, it's her." Inside, the house smelled of old parchment and drying herbs. Scrolls were stacked to the ceiling, and strange ancient artifacts rested on every surface. It was here, surrounded by the ghosts of history, that Lady Mira revealed her true identity. She was the last living descendant of the Dragon Riders, a line of humans who had once formed sacred bonds with dragons, dragons who had dared to oppose Zafira's tyrannical rule. "The Queen," Mira began, her voice gaining strength as she unrolled a vast, ancient map across a large wooden table, "fears only one thing." Her gnarled finger traced a path across the faded ink, landing on a formidable mountain peak. "The return of the Nameless One." Phelan's breath hitched in his throat. "The Nameless One is a myth, a children's story to give hope where there is none." "It's no myth," Mira countered, her gaze sharp and certain. "It is a prophecy. A dragon cast out, stripped of name and wing, shall return when bound to human heart, and bring the Queen of Fire to her knees." A profound silence filled the room. Ryan looked from the map to Mira and then to Phelan. Understanding, stark and overwhelming, dawned in his eyes. "You," he breathed. "The prophecy. It's about you." Mira nodded slowly. "The prophecy speaks of the dragon finding his true name. Not the one given to him by his kind, but a new one bestowed upon him by human love." "Phelan," Ryan whispered, "and the name, his name, the one he had given the lost man he'd found in the woods, suddenly felt imbued with immense, world-altering weight. For 3 days and 3 nights, they didn't rest. They gathered a small but determined force. Villagers who had lost homes and loved ones to dragon raids of the past came forward, their faces hardened by grief and a desire for justice. Former soldiers, grizzled and weary of war but unwilling to see their world burn, answered the call. A few even came forward claiming distant ancestry to the dragon riders, a flicker of ancient magic still alive in their blood. Lady Mira, the wise historian, became their general of knowledge. She taught them the old ways, how to forge weapons of special alloys that could pierce the seemingly impenetrable scales of a dragon. And Phelan, their secret weapon, shared his own knowledge. The weak points in a dragon's armor, their battle tactics, their vulnerabilities. He was teaching them how to fight his own kind. On the eve of the battle, their small, makeshift army gathered in a sheltered valley. Torches flickered like captured stars, casting long, dancing shadows. On a hillside overlooking the encampment, Phelan and Ryan stood alone, wrapped in the quiet of the night. "Tomorrow," Phelan said, his voice low, "everything changes." Ryan stepped closer, wrapping his arms around Phelan from behind, his touch gentle over the scarred landscape of his back where his wings once were. "Whatever happens, I want you to remember this." He turned Phelan to face him, his hands framing Phelan's face. "You are Phelan, beloved of Ryan, protector of the innocent. You are the bravest, kindest soul I have ever known. No queen, no army, no fate can ever take that from you." A wave of emotion washed over Phelan. He cupped Ryan's face in his own hands, his thumbs tracing his cheekbones, trying to memorize every detail of the man who had given him back his world. "If I fall tomorrow," Ryan silenced him with a kiss, deep and full of a love that defied the coming war. "You won't," he whispered against Phelan's lips. "We won't. The prophecy says so." They held each other tightly under the vast, indifferent blanket of stars. But even in their embrace, a cold fear lingered unspoken in both their hearts. They both knew that prophecies were tricky things, often coming true in the most unexpected and most painful of ways. The dawn was coming, and with it, the fire of war. Thank you so much for watching this chapter of our story. If you're as invested in Phelan and Ryan's journey as we are, please hit that like button, and be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens next. Your support means the world to us. See you in the next video. Ryan stood at the very front, his knuckles white around his sword hilt. Beside him, Lady Mira clutched an ancient staff, its crystal pulsing with a soft, defiant blue light. Behind them, faces etched with a mix of terror and grim resolve, villagers held newly forged weapons, ready to defend their homes to their last breath. But one figure stood apart from the rest. Phelan, in his human form, trembled not with fear, but with a storm of rage and memory that threatened to tear him apart. "I will crush you and your pathetic allies, then burn every one of your settlements to ash." A dangerous smile touched Phelan's lips, a cold fire that never reached his eyes. "You always underestimated humans, Zafira, and you always underestimated me." With those words, the air crackled with power. Phelan began to change, his body elongated, his skin shimmering as silver scales rippled across his form. But this was different. This was not the pained, incomplete transformation of before. As his true dragon form burst forth, something miraculous happened. His name! Ryan's voice rang out for all to hear. His true name, given in love, gave him back what you stole. Zephyra's rage exploded. A torrent of black flame erupted from her jaws, a wave of annihilation meant to erase Phelan from existence. But Phelan met it head-on, unleashing his own brilliant fire, and the two streams collided in a blinding, deafening explosion that rocked the very foundations of the valley. The battle began. Dragons clashed against dragons in the sky, while on the ground Zephyra's forces descended upon the human army. Chaos reigned. Your wings, Ryan said softly, sitting beside him. They were beautiful. Phelan smiled, a true, weary smile this time, and leaned into Ryan's comforting presence. They're still there. I can feel them. How is it possible? Ryan asked, his fingers gently tracing the patterns on Phelan's back, which no longer looked like scars, but like intricate, silver tattoos. Lady Mira was right, Phelan replied, his voice filled with wonder. A true name, given in love, has a power beyond all understanding. As the sun finally set, casting the valley in gold and crimson, a new legend was already being whispered among the survivors. The story of the dragon who lost everything, only to find something far greater in the heart of a human who gave him back his name. In the years that followed, their love became the foundation of a new age, a sanctuary where ancient enemies learned to be friends.